Hello everyone and welcome to Bloggrana Everything and welcome back to the channel and welcome to another upload where we're going to kind of be looking at Barcelona's potential transfers. Well, in particular, we're going to be looking at one player and maybe just discussing a little bit further, exactly how this guy is going to fit in, or maybe should I say what Barcelona fans should expect, and maybe even the opposition, what we can expect to see from Mikayil Faye in as far as how he plays, and maybe how he could fit in with Xavi's tactics in particular. Now, before I do actually go completely into this, I just want to also maybe give a bit of a disclaimer, maybe even an apology here. I don't necessarily have footage of Faye. The footage that I was watching, that I used to base my opinion off of, I tried contacting the person who uploaded the stuff to YouTube, and well, they say that I couldn't use it. But yeah, just to let you know that the footage that you're seeing here is not Mikayil Faye. It's probably going to be just different players who maybe I liken him to at some point, or showing like an illustration of what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's a lot of talking for a disclaimer / apology thing. So let's go ahead and talk about Mikayil Faye and what exactly should we expect from this 18-year-old kid coming from Senegal, who has been playing straight in the second division of Croatia with NK Kustosia. So yeah, I went and I did my homework, guys, and know how to pronounce the name of this team now. Okay, so I'm feeling rather proud of myself. Anywho, from what I did see of Mikayil Faye and also from some interview that I read with one of his former coaches at Kustosia, the thing about him that sets him apart, probably even from other players, not just his age, but just generally on the pitch, is that for a defender in particular, he has great physicality and, especially for his age. Okay, he is a quite strong player. You could tell from how he imposes himself on his opponents. He's quite an aggressive player and he tends to impose himself on his opponents, and he likes to really bully and just dominate them, and because of that he tends to win his fair share of duels. So whether it's going to be aerial duels or ground duels, even in situations where he looks like maybe somebody has the beating of him, he's sorry, my dog now wants to be part of this, but yeah, there's some clips which I saw where it looked like somebody had the beating of him, in a 1v1, but he was able to recover, not just because of his strength, which he has, but also he has a very great burst of pace about him. He's got a tremendous acceleration, I think. Not, of course, maybe the fastest defender we've seen, the guys like Costas Manolas and the likes who can really sprint really fast. He's not going to be like, the fastest defender we have, but he's not going to be too far off of them either. He's not that much slower than Araujo from what I can see. And his pace really over that first 10 yards, his acceleration is pretty good, and it contributes greatly to his ability to be able to win those 1v1 duels, because once he can get even just an inch ahead of you, he can easily just shepherd you off the ball, or shield you off the ball, or just really bundle you off of it. However big you might be, he's got a physical presence that you are definitely going to feel. The other thing which stood out about him is, of course, his ball playing abilities. He has some pretty good ball playing abilities. I'm not going to make it sound like he's maybe like upper tier in terms of his abilities on the ball. Like, no, he's not at that level, but he's not too far off of it, I will put it that way. He's pretty good at bringing the ball out from the back. He has this I don't know how else to describe it, but just say this natural ability of moving with the ball at his feet. So when he gets the chance to take the ball into his stride, he's usually he looks very elegant when he's doing that. He can take the ball into his stride very easily, running with it and also dribbling past people as well. Surprisingly, for a guy of his size, he's quite handy in as far as dribbling past opponents. kind of like how John Stones looked in that Champions League final against Inter. Yeah, he kind of has that about him as well. He can just drop a shoulder and shimmy past somebody who's trying to take the ball off of him. So he is quite decent with the ball. In fact, more than above average at least. He's just not like top tier. Okay, and his passing abilities probably is another attribute of his that's definitely got Barcelona looking at him. In particular, we know that Xavi Hernandez has been encouraging his players like Araujo, for example, to really use that long diagonal pass, the one that goes from Barcelona's right center back to Barcelona's left winger, that kind of a pass. Well, he has that pass in his drawer, actually. He has it in his locker. And from the footage that I saw, he is able quite easily to, just ping a ball across the pitch, from that left center back kind of region to the right winger or to the center forward. So he does have that in his repertoire, which is very encouraging for such a young player, because that kind of passing, it's only going to get better with time. The more of those passes he hits, the more of a feel he's going to get for it, the better he's going to be at actually doing it. So, like I said, great physicality, quite aggressive in his defending. He has that long range passing ability, which is available to him, and, good ball playing abilities. He's a decent ball carrier, really. Like I said, with a surprisingly good ability to dribble past people despite his size. And on top of that as well, because of his size, he does have a great leap and also some very, very good aerial abilities. So he's definitely a force in the air. Maybe as he grows some more, he can learn how he can use that even on attacking set pieces, that kind of thing. But as things stand, at least he's more than good enough, I would say, for, once again, an 18-year-old, because you have to remember he's still young and he's still learning, and to already be as good as he is, I think aerially it's pretty good. It's pretty impressive. Unfortunately, I don't have the stats to show you how many aerial duels he wins, because nobody makes those stats for the Croatian second division, apparently, which is, I don't know. Maybe if you do know somebody who does do that, you can just, feel free to link it for me in the description. Anywho, with all of that said, we've definitely got a general idea of what kind of stuff we can expect to see from young Mikayil Faye should he make his way into Barcelona's first team. And I know there's been a lot of comparisons that people have made between him and Araujo, and that's primarily because of, that physicality that he has, and the way that he approaches 1v1s. It's definitely very similar to how Araujo approaches those as well. But for me, I thought that he is a lot more of a mix between Koulibaly and a rather young Samuel Umtiti. And the reason why I go with those two is kind of like Samuel Umtiti when he was young, he used to play as a left wing back. Sorry, he used to play as a left back as well. And that's something which, like we had mentioned in the last time I spoke about Faye, that he can play in that position. So versatility is another strength of his. He can play as a left back. He can play as a left center back. And to be quite honest, the skill set that he has, you can probably transpose some of it to pivot. And I know that's being a bit too ambitious maybe in some regard, because I'll explain why anyway, some of the things that he still has to work on, which would make him in a pivot kind of role not too good. But yeah, I think that with the kind of skill set that he has, Barcelona can easily use him as a left center back, easily use him as a left back, and in a situation where maybe things are looking pretty dire, there's injuries all over, there's nobody else you could pick to play pivot, I think he can anchor the team. He could play pivot there just because of how tidy he can be when taking the ball off opponents, but also carrying the ball higher up the pitch. And so yeah, because of that, like I said, he reminds me of Umtiti, and he reminds me of Koulibaly, of course, because probably that's the more I would say, appropriate comparison for me than Araujo, because, Koulibaly as well does have that physical side to his game. And I would say that unlike Araujo, his physicality, that is Faye, much like Koulibaly's, doesn't really have that, could I say, passion to it. There's just that, that characteristic which like Carles Puyol had, which you just see with how he play. Like, there's somebody like Sergio Ramos who is like, a physical or aggressive defender, right? But the way that Ramos went about it and the way that Puyol went about it, it's different, despite the fact that they're both pretty aggressive defenders. And it's the same case here, I would say, if I was comparing the way that Faye is aggressive and the way that Araujo is aggressive, Faye's aggression looks a lot more like Koulibaly's than it does like Araujo's. So, that's why for me, I think it would be something like, Umtiti meets Koulibaly for FC Barcelona. Now, obviously, this is a kid, once again, we're talking about, right? It's like an 18-year-old. So he's not yet the finished article, and he still does have a lot of growing to do. And some of the things which he has to improve on are some of the reasons why I said he would probably maybe not be able to survive as a pivot, because kind of like we've seen with Eric Garcia, it's one thing to be very good on the ball and even bringing the ball out the back, and it's another to, be good at playing as a pivot for a team like Barcelona. So one example that I would give is, I think Fayes' first touch, he still has a bit of work to do on that, because he still has to get to the point where his first touch is sure enough that he'll be able to get the ball under control, even if he's under pressure from, a team pressing him high up the pitch. And currently, his first touch sometimes leaves him in situations where he has to rely on his pace and his acceleration to recover from having that poor first touch. But, that might be something that you can always do, maybe when you're playing in the second division of Croatia, or maybe even when you're playing in Segunda and even in La Liga. But when you're at the highest level, when you're playing in the Champions League, those are kinds of things that will have your team picked off, because just that heavier touch that you have would be enough for somebody to put pressure on you and take the ball off you and just, go the other way and score. And another thing which Faye still needs to work on, or something which still needs to add to his game, which I think for me would make him an even bigger jewel for FC Barcelona, and which, if he did add this trait to his game, in addition to, improving his first touch, if he added this other trait, then definitely I think he would be able to fit in as a pivot for Barcelona. He still needs to learn how to make line-breaking passes. So, sure, he's got that diagonal ball over the top, which is, well and good, but it's a completely different skill set when you can pick a pass through the pressure, not going over it, but going right through it and finding your opponents who are free, who are unmarked in between the opposition lines. So, line breaking passes, like we call them, this is something which I would say that Barcelona's defense actually lacks a lot of without Christensen available. Eric Garcia, for me, looked like, he could be somebody who could bring that characteristic to Barcelona's defense, but he's just not really been able to do it. And throw in the fact that he's not good defensively, and, he ends up looking like a liability. But for Faye, if he can add that line-breaking pass, looking at the example I've given already of Christensen, if he can learn how to find those passes, especially how to find them off of his first touch, right? Because that's something which Busquets has been doing just so brilliantly, where it's going to be a one-time pass. It doesn't need two touches, just needs one touch, and he's going to play it right through the opposition's pressure and straight to the feet of a teammate. Now, this is something which, obviously, Faye might never add to his game. But like I said, this is just one area of his game which, if he can improve on that, that would honestly just be like the best thing ever. since sliced bread. And finally, I would also add that probably another thing which for Faye needs to come into consideration is that he needs to be tested in just overall a better environment. And I mean a better environment in terms of competition from teammates as well as competition from opponents. Okay, no disrespect to Gustosia, but it's hard to be sure exactly how good Faye is from just looking at footage of him in the Croat second division. Now, obviously, if he comes to Barcelona, he'll have that run, of course, in La Masia first. He'll have that run at Barca Athletic first, just so we can see exactly how good he is. And I think working with somebody like Rafa Marquez, who was himself quite a phenomenal ball-playing defender in his days, I think him being able to work with a kid like Faye could end up proving very, very profitable for the young Senegalese here. Okay, so that's basically that. You can let me know your thoughts on everything that I've said this far. What do you expect? What are you hoping to see from Faye? Aside from that, I think that's basically that. We'll wait to hear more news from FC Barcelona in as far as transfers are concerned, and then as far as, moves being made to reduce that wage bill and to bring in more revenue. Anywho, thank you once again for tuning in. Do have a great day, and Forza Barca.